how very quickly they targeted the most vulnerable in our society. It was a political decision to attack people on welfare, and it was done in the most vicious fashion, and there was a whole narrative of striver versus skiver. I don't know if you use that word, skiver, moocher, someone who lives off the state. And but when you actually looked at the reality of it, and looked at the statistics, and talked to academics, and spoke to people who knew about it, they had a stereotype that 25% of the welfare budget was claimed fraudulently. The reality was in fact less than 1%. It was dwarfed by the amount of people who didn't or avoided paying their taxes, especially our multinationals. And so it's very interesting to see how it was portrayed. There was such a grand difference between reality and this distorted version that was stuffed down our throats. So civil servants talked about low-lying fruit, in other words, easy targets. And so they picked on the people who were the most vulnerable. In fact, disabled people suffer 6 times more from the cuts than anyone else. So what we thought we would do is we would examine this world. And it takes a great deal of time to get your head around the welfare system, because it's very, very complex. It's different from, single people, disabled people, older people, etc. So we spent a lot of time in the food banks, and we spoke to people who had lived through it, because the lived experience is one thing, and not just the stuff in theory. And here we are in the 5th richest economy in the United Kingdom in the world, and you saw people choosing between heat and food. We saw people giving their children biscuits. We saw people being targeted by the DWP, that's the Department of Work and Pensions, who gave people sanctions. At the height of the crisis, they were giving 1 million sanctions a year. So that was 500,000 times the misery that we've just seen here on the table. So what we wanted to do was tell a story that was almost elemental, almost raw, and try and just follow it through in the simplest fashion as we possibly could. And what we found, of course, was that there were many, many rougher stories. People with mental vulnerabilities, people with learning difficulties. But actually, Daniel Blake is actually a very articulate, bright man who could build a house with a proper life. And yet, he was incredibly vulnerable. So it was a key decision. And we did all this research before actually just forgetting it all and inventing these stories.
David Jones gives a really great performance, but I really want to commend you for bringing so much art to the film. It's probably one of the most powerful roles for women in all of Ken Loach's movie. The tomato can scene is one of the most heartbreaking scenes I've seen on stage on screen in a long time. The reading at the end was very moving. Can you talk a little bit about your approach to the world, fitting in this role, like in this world of Ken Loach's film, and fitting in with Paul and Ken?
Yeah, of course. Thank you very much. Ken's process is very different to a lot of directors. Definitely different to any director I've worked with before. So my initial meeting with him, I didn't have Paul's script. I didn't know anything about the character or anything about the film really. And I went in and I had a 10-minute chat with him about myself, where I was from, a bit about my life, and then did subsequent auditions again without Paul's script, improvised auditions with Dave Johns, and then got the part. And the way that Ken makes a film is a dream for any actor, I think, because he shoots everything chronologically. He doesn't give you the responsibility of, he didn't give me Paul's script, so I didn't have the responsibility of in 15 days time, 20 days time, knowing I needed to get to this place emotionally or that place. He gives you sections of the script as you go. So I knew about, for example, the food bank scene. A massive part of what I knew about to do with the character was to do with hunger. And Ken had said to me, you reach a point where it gets quite desperate in the hunger, so we need to think about that and work out a way between the two of us and how to do that in a kind of safe way. But yeah, he's a dream to work with for an actor because it's chronological. You don't have the responsibility of the script, and his crew is one that is so part of the collaboration, make you feel very safe, invest in what you're doing. And there's a focus and an energy to it, to the shoot, that means you can kind of match the trust that he's shown in you by not giving you a script, if that makes sense.
Well, you do get the script, but it's in sections. That's the
Yeah,
difference.
yeah. I mean, not having the script from the beginning to go, I've got the responsibility of this whole thing to take on to get from start to end. But yeah, and also having Paul on set was a massive part of it as well, because as we went through, there may have been things that, you know, on occasions, rarely, but on a couple of occasions, the camera would continue rolling. Ken would say, carry on talking to each other, and there'd be something that Paul would think of that he would come over and we could pop in, which was nice.